I'm here with Chief Justice Martin of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And I'd like to start by asking you about a particular question that I know challenges every state, and that is the number of unrepresented litigants we have in the courts. Could you describe what that situation is like in North Carolina and the problems it creates?
Well, I think it's a real threat to us having just determinations in the courts. I have served both as a trial court judge and as an appellate court judge, and whether it be the procedures we use in the trial court or the rules of appellate procedure, which require degrees of competence and proficiency in navigating those rules. It's quite a challenge for self-represented litigants to navigate that process. So this is a compelling issue that we need to address in the American legal system, both at the state and federal level.
So I asked you about that dimension of our access to justice problem because it's one over which you preside, running your court system. But of course there are many other dimensions to this, and that led us to have this panel today, and earlier than that it led the ABA Commission really to study how we deliver justice in our country. And as part of their recommendations, the Commission recommended to the states that they consider some regulatory changes, one having to do with broadening the scope of who can participate in delivering legal service, and the other having to do with who might invest in the business of law firms. So those ideas likely will come to yours and every other Supreme Court. And so could you tell us a little bit about how you go about evaluating proposals to change the regulations?
Once the ABA makes a revision and ratified by the House of Delegates, then the next stop is the Conference of Chief Justices. And that's an important stop because at the end of the day, as you alluded to, the model rules will then be disseminated to the respective states. And at that point, whichever entity in that state, typically the state Supreme Court, has jurisdiction over those determinations, would give consideration to the proposed ethical standards, and if adopted, it would become a binding rule in that jurisdiction. Now, in terms of how individual state Supreme Courts would handle that type of determination, this is not arising on the adjudicatory aspect of the court operations. So courts would be very interested in what various stakeholders would have to say about the proposals, both bar associations and attorneys, as well as other stakeholders within that specific state. And so that's a pretty good summary, I think, of the process that you would see for all proposed modifications to the codes for attorneys or judges, including the two that you alluded to.
And that's, as you say, that's if this proposal comes up through the American Bar Association. Mm-hmm. What about proposals that come up otherwise?
Well, there's always the possibility, as Justice Brandeis counseled many years ago, the states in fact serve as laboratories of democracy, and that's also true in lawyer regulation. An individual state can actually initiate a change to its rules, and of course if the change is ratified or enacted, it becomes controlling as to lawyers in that jurisdiction. Right. And so the ABA, through the Commission on the Future of Legal Services, highlighted a number of states that were experimenting with various modifications of the rules in an effort to better achieve access to justice.
Right. And interestingly, and part of why I'm asking you these questions today, on this question of outside investment, the ABA House of Delegates has voted once again, just this year, that it will not approve such forms of organization, and yet the Commission recommended that the states continue to study the question. So it raises the possibility that this question would come to you or other states without first being approved by the ABA. And so it's one of those things that might happen. All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you so much for being with us this year at the Law Firm Leaders Forum.
Oh, thank you, Ralph.